If you notice the title of the show, episode 380 of For Canon's Sake. And the title is They Are Not Worth Salvaging. And I want to expand on that and what it is that I mean. A lot of people it's a love-hate relationship. It's also an abusive one too. And we did a segment yesterday discussing some of these elements as well and where I differ. And some people are in the interest of protecting the status quo. And that was kind of the point of the previous segment where I have no interest in protecting the status quo. Even if that means that I somehow get the crap end of the stick and I get lesser because the status quo is no longer what it is, I'm okay with that. Perfectly fine, because I have no issue seeing the current kind of system completely upended and in the entertainment space, and that's going to look unfamiliar for basically everybody in the event that happens. I'm okay with that. A lot of folks don't want that because that uncertainty is something that they are very scared of. But I'm of the opinion that these entities, be it in these entertainment companies, these entertainment brands, are not worth trying to save. Now, you can be optimistic, and I think this is more so the best case scenario if you look at it. Parallel economy catches on with vast amounts of people, and what happens is you get one of two different things. I've mentioned this before. They pivot from this current weird political, social obsession that they have, or they get ran into the ground, and then people that do care about these entertainment brands that existed before end up purchasing them. I don't particularly care either way. In fact, I would actually, if I'm going to be completely honest, I would say I more so prefer for them to be, dead in the past. I think it's important to realize, and I think this is where a lot of folks lose sight of. When you look at some of these entertainment brands you guys have been connected to forever, you grew up on it, your parents grew up on it, some cases, you enjoyed it. It's something that you've really liked thoroughly. But you have to look at what era those were created in as well. I think the technology alone, we can focus on simply that, and the element that added to business that just simply was not present. So a lot of them came up with, let's say this, they grew in an aspect of history that had, in comparison to now, an archaic model in terms of existing. Now, what I mean by that, again, something else you've heard me reiterate many times. Technology, and even with as much as I despise social media, sometimes it also is a great source of content. I'm also not completely oblivious to the fact that if it weren't for social media, a lot of you guys wouldn't know who the hell I was. But that in itself introduced a new element to just business, where you have a direct line of sight with your audience that you once didn't have before. A lot of people don't seem to understand is that when you look at these mega corporate entities, entertainment companies that have control of so many different brands that they didn't start. Like, they didn't start under the Walt Disney wing or the Walt Disney Company or the Disney Brothers company. They didn't start that way. It just got that way now. And you look at some of these different entities that were created when, sometimes it was I'm not even going to say it's in the best interest. At the time, folks thought it was, whether you sell off your assets to certain people, because they looked at it like a ceiling. Like, okay, we can only get this far. And they want maybe the creative or the group of creatives want more money. So they say, I will sell this to you or license it to you. In some cases, most cases, these guys are just selling it off. And now these entertainment brands are in the hands of these mega corporate entities. Now, again, a lot of that is the way that it is because of the model that existed in so many different forms of entertainment. Now, what has happened now is that the means in order to get the information out there has been affordable now. It is affordable. And this is what I mean when I say you have the direct line of sight as well, and that I could post something and get this to my audience without having to rely upon some mega corporate entity. I mean, you've seen just with the element of like just something like a YouTube or something like that that has turned people into superstars. They didn't go through the usual channels like the Hollywoods, and they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to do that. So they had a direct line of sight, or people have a direct line of sight with their audience. So what's going to me, it needs to happen, and it's actually overdue considering the technology or the technological growth, where are the alternatives or the stuff that's in, let's say, some of the entertainment stuff that we love, or our side of the entertainment world, that have the updated economic model, or even not even just the economic model, like the whole business model in general, that has been able to significantly take advantage, of what exists right now and what is available to them. So this is why I say those entities were created with an archaic model. This isn't me being like, it's precisely the opposite of me being like the old man, because if I was that, I would be wanting to salvage these companies. Whereas to now, I don't care. They were created, and they were great for the times that they were created, and it made sense back then. Unfortunately, these guys have sold off several assets. Disney now owns X and O, and this mega company or owns this and that. And it's like, well, now people can create without having to rely upon selling off your assets to people that are much bigger than you in order to make this a lucrative career. Like you can be a multi-million. This is what I would love to happen on our side, where we just become multi-millionaires by just selling books to customers that want them. We don't need Marvel, DC, or even the other major disconnected brands, whether it be the dark horses or, Images, or like who says that we have to go through. We don't, not anymore. So those brands that often, because I could argue that I was in that bubble before, where I was like, okay, with intention, I am bringing up and comparing and contrasting both current era and previous era of, let's say, a Marvel or DC, in hopes that these guys change. Then you realize, okay, they're not going to change because they got progressively worse. Even if their sales weren't doing that well, they just got worse. The insane people now control the asylum. So at this point, despite me having had all of this stuff that I own that is Marvel or DC related, not saying I'm going to burn those. No, they existed and they were great for when they were great. However, going into the future, no reason to rely upon Marvel or DC for really fucking anything for that matter. Who cares? Why can't there be some alternatives that crush it, that have the same perceived legitimacy as a Marvel and DC, but to the audience that wants them? Not just solely relying on nostalgia, not solely relying upon the accomplishments that they had before. So they're not even worth salvaging. These companies aren't worth salvaging. These entertainment brands aren't worth salvaging because, again, they were created during a time where the model is archaic in comparison to now, and we need an update. You see now who controls them, and you got to cut your losses there. But they're not even worth salvaging, because not even just with the woke stuff that we're all talking about, or we're always talking about, just considering now. You want to talk, people bitch and moan about, they talk about monopolies and they talk about mega corporations, not understanding that now more than ever can the means be afforded by people that don't have pull to so much money, and yet can still see success. The even crowdfund element to certain business models people have skipped so many lines that they otherwise would have had to be selling this off to this investor. You don't even have to do that anymore. So if anything, we need the next best thing with also the business model that is updated. And in doing so, what you're going to get on the other side of this is people being able to decide not only where they're being more privy to where the dollar's going and maybe not, I don't know, funding people that freaking hate them or would then use the money to put out filth to show them how much they suck. Marvel and DC is so good for that. A lot of Disney Tide brands are so good for that. But not only that, the beauty of it all is going to be that so much now and things that come from this recent era that grow and come into fruition are going to be creator-owned projects. They're going to be creator-owned. They're going to be detached from these mega corporate entities, which means to me better product and more transparency, right? And I think that's good from an economic standpoint, just because of the market. We talk about decentralization. I mean, that's that right there. And yeah, there may not be one entity making billions upon billions of dollars all the time. Maybe that's not the case, but there will be plenty of successes. And you'll see that passion remain in those projects because now they're incentivized to keep hold of them because they can make it very lucrative for themselves without having to sell it off to someone else for the sake of getting it to the audience, for the sake of getting it to the customers. Those days are behind us. And if they aren't in terms of your industry, it'll get there. That's just simply what technology has allowed. It's a beautiful thing. So I say, let those companies die. There's nothing worth salvaging. There's nothing that we can't take and learn from and create something new that is updated, right? And again, has that level of transparency. And you don't have to, it ain't about agreements all the time. It ain't about disagreements all the time. It's about, I don't know, people know where their dollar's going, and maybe it's not going to someone that is actively trying to destroy them or what it is that they believe and stand for. That to me is a beautiful thing. That to me is a something that is far more useful than whatever the hell it is that we have right now, where you have so many people that only see legitimacy and brands that have existed for decades that are not even controlled or ran by the people that started them. And there are going to be some folks that are going to fight like hell against this. Because again, the status quo, so many people are benefited from it. Even the people that act like they don't like the status quo. They don't like the current era of what's going on. A lot of them benefit from even being contrarian. So of course, they're going to want the status quo to continue to exist because they benefit, even if they're looking like, hey, I'm on the opposite end. They want this to exist. You're seeing some of that stuff in even our content creation space, where it's like, do you really want these guys to change? Because then you don't have content. You know, and it seems to be that there's plenty of people like that. Whereas to me, and I've said this in this segment, and I've said it in plenty of segments before, if on the other side of this means that there are going to be folks that, again, we just can't possibly, it's markets, man. We can't possibly know how exactly the market's going to look. And there will be some people that simply are going to not be around because the market doesn't call for them to be around. And if that was me, okay, I'm perfectly fine with that. That uncertainty doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all. I welcome that. I'm intrigued by the level of uncertainty that if people detach from these brands that they know and love so much in entertainment alone, and they start rerouting their attention to other things, and, you know, it gets an uber competitive market, people have no idea what the other side of that's going to look like. I welcome that. I welcome it. I'm intrigued by it. And I'm okay with that because I don't give a shit about the status quo being around. The companies, they're not worth that. They're not worth salvaging, not worth banging your head against the wall, giving them your hope, admiration, while they then use the platform that was given to them to then tell you how much you suck. because you voted a certain way or because you see this value this part of family or whatever it is, stupid stuff that they call themselves being mad at. To me, I think it's insane that this hasn't happened earlier. Y'all sat and watched these people among these entertainment brands call half of the voting population Nazis. And still you fund these companies because they were talking about you, right? Now, to be fair, a lot of people are seeing it for what it is nowadays. But it's fine. You already have possession of some things that may have come from these eras that you value. But don't allow that to give you this sort of battered wife sort of syndrome where you just feel like these guys have to exist and they have to keep being around with their outdated, archaic business models, relying upon things that they had nothing to do with. It's strictly nostalgia. They have nothing to do with it. So may the alternatives, may the new versions rise from, be it the ashes or right now. Either way, these companies are not worth saving, not worth salvaging.
You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.